Good morning, good evening, and all other good things in between, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Mittagschwung, and welcome to my read-along stream of Dungeon Master's Guide to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. We are currently at Chapter 6. Let's get to it. Chapter 6, Between Adventures. A campaign is much more than a series of adventures. It also includes the moments between them, the various distractions and side pursuits that engage the characters. They are not exploring the wilderness, plundering dungeons and gallivanting around the multiverse on some epic quest. The natural pace of a campaign offers lulls between adventures, time for the characters to spend their treasure and pursue their goals. This downtime gives the characters an opportunity to sink their roots a little deeper into the world, building a personal investment in what happens to the people and places around them, which can, in turn, draw them into further adventures. Chapter 5 Equipment of the Player's Handbook details the expenses that the character incurs for basic necessities, depending on the lifestyle the character chooses, from poverty to luxury. Chapter 8 Adventuring of that book describes some of the downtime activities they can pursue between adventures. This chapter fills in the gaps, describing the expenses of owning property and hiring PCs, and a variety of additional downtime activities characters can pursue. The beginning of the chapter also offers suggestions for linking adventures together and keeping track of events in your campaign. Linking adventures. A campaign in the style of an episodic television show rarely needs story links between its adventures. Each adventure features its own villains, and once the characters complete the adventure, there are typically no loose plot threads. The next adventure presents an altogether different challenge, having nothing to do with the adventure that precedes it. As the characters gain experience points, they become more powerful, as do the threats they must overcome. This kind of campaign is easy to run since it requires little effort beyond finding or creating adventures appropriate for the party's level. A campaign with a narrative lets the players feel as though their actions have far-reaching consequences, but not just racking up experience points. A few simple modifications can help you overlay overarching elements to create a serialized campaign in which early adventures help set up later ones. Personally, I see no appeal in playing an adventure that doesn't incorporate an overarching plot. Just walking into dungeons and killing everything that's there, or stealing everything that's there, or even if it has more to it, but none of it has a story, I wouldn't find it fun. I don't think anybody really plays that way. And if you do, I strongly urge you to think maybe about trying to incorporate a plot, and I have a feeling that anyone would like it more. My bet is that you'll like it more. Anyway, using an overarching story, this section presents a couple of examples of overarching stories which have, over the years, fueled many classic D&D campaigns. The adventurer's goal in the first example is to amass the power they need to defeat a powerful enemy that threatens the world. Sounds horrible, sounds so cliche. Their goal in the second example is to defend something they care about by destroying whatever threatens it. The two examples are in effect the same story, variation of the battle between good and evil told in different ways, while none of them sounds very inspired. Anyway, example 1, the quest of many parts. You can tie adventures together using an overarching goal that can be fulfilled only by first completing a series of related quests. For example, you could create a villain who can't be defeated until the characters explore 9 dungeons in which the 9 Dread Princes reside, with each of these dungeons stocked with enough monsters and hazards to advance the adventurers 2 or 3 levels. The adventurers spend their whole careers fighting the 9 Dread Princes, before finally pursuing an epic quest to destroy the prince's monstrous progenitor. As long as every dungeon is unique and interesting, your players will appreciate the tight focus of the campaign. Will they? I mean, that campaign sounds absolutely horrendous when it comes to plot and originality. I don't know though, maybe you could make any structure, any big rough strokes sketch of a story interesting if you can come up with interesting details and little quirks, but kill 9 guys or get 9 MacGuffins isn't very enticing in and of itself. In a similar type of quest campaign, the adventurers might need to collect fragments of an artifact that are scattered in ruins across the multiverse before reassembling the artifact and using it to defeat a cosmic threat. A thought occurred to me. I guess that many of us who decide to become DMs do so because we like stories. We inherently like stories, or maybe even we inherently have ideas for stories that we'd like to tell. And I assume that most of our stories are unlike this one. I personally am into being a DM because I have a bunch of story ideas that I cannot utilize through other outlets. I can't make a video game on my own. It's too hard. And trust me, I tried. And for example, if I wanted to write a comic book with using my story ideas, maybe I could, but it would take so long. It would take a crushing amount of time, really. I'd probably have to quit my job, realistically, to do it. But no one would see it. Almost no one would see it. I'm not a comic book creator of great fame, and I'm probably not that great of a writer. And I couldn't distribute it. I'd have no way, really. But I can make a game for my friends, or even for some random people on the internet, and it's going to take a much shorter amount of my life to do so, because you don't have to draw every single panel, and you don't have to code every single aspect of your game. You can use imagination, and you can even outsource some of the quote-unquote burden of creating a story, which it's not really a burden, but you get to like delegate some of the story creation to your players. They're going to help you with the creation of it. Everybody's going to contribute a bit of their thing to it, right? And it's really easy to make a story using D&D. Well, I haven't done it using D&D, but to make a story using a tabletop RPG. And I assume D&D is no different. It's a tabletop RPG. So it's great for this sort of thing. It's really easy compared to the older storytelling media that are like absolutely so crushing to make. Anyway, example 2. Agents of X. You can also build a campaign around the idea that the adventurers are agents of something larger than themselves. A kingdom, or a secret organization, for example. Whenever their allegiance lies, the adventurers are motivated by loyalty, with the goal of protecting whatever it is they serve. The character's overarching mission might be to explore and map an uncharted region, forcing alliances where they can and overcoming threats they encounter along the way. Their goal might be to find the ancient capital of a fallen empire, which lies beyond the realm of a known enemy and forces them to navigate hostile territory. The characters could be pilgrims in search of a holy site, or members of a secret order dedicated to defending the last bastions of civilization in an ever-declining world. Or they might be spies and assassins, striving to weaken an enemy country by targeting its evil leaders and plundering its treasures, planting adventure seeds. You can make a campaign feel like one story with many chapters by planting the seeds of the next adventure before the current one is finished. This technique can naturally move the characters along to the next goal. If you've planted the seed well, the characters have something else to do when they finish an adventure. Perhaps a character drinks from a magic fountain in a dungeon and receives a mystifying vision that leads to the next quest. The party might find a cryptic map or relic that, once its meaning or purpose is determined, points to a new destination. Perhaps an NPC warns the characters of impending danger or implores them for help. The trick is not to distract the characters from the adventure at hand. Designing an effective hook for the future adventure requires finesse. The lore should be compelling but not so irresistible that the players stop caring about what their characters are doing right now. I guess that's an easy one. If you have an idea for an adventure, finding a good hook for it, it's kind of easy. A lot of the time it comes naturally, provided I already know what's going to be the adventure that I want to hook for. If I don't know, that's hard. But if I know, it's kind of easy. To keep players from straying, save your best ideas for the very end of your adventures, or insert them during periods of downtime. Here are a few examples of ways in which an adventure seed can be revealed. On a villain's corpse, the characters find evidence that the villain was working for someone else. That one is garbage because it doesn't have a setup. If it doesn't have a setup earlier on, it doesn't feel like a compelling story moment. It feels tacked on at the very end. So I don't like this one. I strongly recommend that you think of a setup earlier on. A captured NPC reveals the location of someone or something that might interest the characters. Characters are heading to a local tavern when they spot a wanted poster or missing person poster, complete with the promise of a sizable reward. Members of the local militia or city watch put out the word that a crime has been committed, and they are looking for a potential witness and suspects. The characters receive an anonymous letter that sheds light on a plot or impending event of which they were previously unaware. So here's my idea for a setup, and it's going to be a bit cliche because I'm just throwing it off the cuff. It's not something I plan to actually do in my next campaign or anything like that. We have a main villain. That's pretty cliche, having a main villain, but we have him. For example, the characters know that they want to kill him, they want to defeat him. But there is also a character in the quest hub, whatever, in the town nearby, a normal good character that has some maybe adventuring past, that has some combat prowess, but they're a good character. They're a fundamentally good character that care for the evil character. Maybe they knew him before he was evil. Maybe they knew him before he was cursed and changed. Maybe he's a He's an Oathbreaker paladin, and they knew him from before he broke the oath, and they kind of understand him, they kind of feel for him, and they beseech us not to kill that person. But the story, from other reasons, it kind of pushes the characters to actually try and kill the villain, right? Maybe at some point the good character said that if you do this, if you kill this person, I'm going to hamper you at every step, and I'm going to become your enemy. And set that up early on, as early as possible, as early as you find it convenient for the story. And then they kill the main villain, and you can have them return to that town. You could have missing posters of this formerly good character, and maybe a letter of promised vengeance in their house once the adventurers arrive there, after the last session where they killed the worst, baddest villain, and this formerly good character becomes a new antagonist, for example. And it's gonna feel much more powerful because you set it up early on. If you don't set it up early on, it's not that good. It's always good if you set it up early. That's my belief. I firmly believe that. Anyway, I like this sort of thing in movies too, when they set it up very early on, and then you look back, yeah, I knew this was coming. Or maybe you didn't know it was coming, and you look back on the movie, wow, they really got me here. Anyway, foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is an exercise in subtlety, involving the delicate planting of seeds for future adventures. Not all foreshadowing bears fruit, particularly if the clues are too subtle. Okay, so this is what I've been talking about. Or if events conspire to take your campaign in new directions. The goal of foreshadowing is to hint at an upcoming event and new threats in your campaign, without making it obvious to players that you're telling them what the future holds. Here are a few examples. I wonder if they have good examples. An object worn or carried by an enemy has the symbol of a previously unknown organization engraved or written on it. A mad woman standing on a street corner spouts fragments of an ancient prophecy while pointing a crooked finger at the characters. The king and queen announced their marriage of their son to the daughter of a neighboring monarch, but various factions opposed the union. Trouble is brewing. Bugbear scouts are making incursions into civilized lands and spying on settlements as a prelude to a hobgoblin warlord's invasion. A puppet show in a market square predicts a tragic outcome if two noble houses on the cusp of declaring war on each other refuse to reconcile. NPC adventurers in a city are being murdered in a similar yet unusual manner, hinting at the future threat to the player characters. Campaign tracking. Consistent details bring your campaign to life and continuously help players imagine that their characters are living in a real world. If the adventurers frequent a particular tavern, the staff layout of the building and decor shouldn't change much from one visit to the next. That said, changes can occur as a result of characters' actions or actions they learn about. When the adventurers kill a monster, it stays dead unless someone raises it. When they remove treasure from a room, it doesn't reappear the next time they enter, assuming it hasn't been stolen from them. If they leave a door open, it should stay open until someone closes it. It's not a video game, it stands to reason that mobs aren't going to respawn and treasure isn't going to respawn either, I guess. No one's memory is infallible, so it pays to keep records. Drop notes directly on an adventure map to keep track of open doors, disarmed traps, and the like. Events beyond the scope of a single adventure are best recorded in a notebook dedicated to your campaign. Whether it's a physical book or an electronic file, such a record is a great way to keep your notes organized. Your notebook might include any of the following elements. Campaign planner. Write down the main story arc of your campaign and keep track of the things that you hope appear in the future adventures. Update it as the campaign develops, adding ideas as they come to you. Character notes. Write down the characters' backgrounds and goals, since the notes can help you design adventure content that provides opportunities for character development. Keep a running tally of adventurers' classes and levels, as well as any quests and downtime activities they're engaged in. If the characters have a ship or stronghold, record its name and whereabouts, as well as any hirelings the characters employ. Player handouts. Keep a copy of all handouts you make for your players so that you don't have to remember their contents later. Adventure log. Think of this log as an episode guide for your campaign. Summarize each game session or adventure to help you keep track of the unfolding campaign story. You can give your players access to the log as well, or to try an edited version stripped of your notes and secrets. The players might also keep their own record of adventures, which you can refer to if your own log isn't complete. NPC notes. Record statistics and role-playing notes for any NPC the characters interact with more than once. For example, your notes might differentiate important people in town by their different voices, as well as their names, the places where they live and work, and the names of their family members and associates, and maybe even a secret that each one of them has. Campaign calendar. Your world feels more natural to your players when the characters notice the passage of time Note details such as the change of seasons and major holidays, and keep track of any important events that affect the larger story. Toolbox. Keep your notes whenever you create or alter a monster, magic item or trap. Keep any maps, random dungeons or encounters you create. This information ensures you won't repeat your work, and you'll be able to draw on this material later. Recurring expenses. Besides the expenses associated with maintaining a particular lifestyle, adventurers might have additional drains on their adventuring income. Player characters who come into possession of property, own businesses, and employ hirelings must cover the expenses that accompany these ventures. Maintenance costs. I guess you don't have to read those. Look, we could. It's not that long. We're gonna forget it, but... Property. Abbey costs 20 GP per day. Farm costs 5 GP per day. Guildhall, town or city costs 5 GP per day. Inn or a rural roadside. Saying rural roadside 10 times fast would be pretty difficult. I'm not gonna try it though. In rural roadside costs 10 GP to maintain per day. In town or city 5 GP to maintain per day. Keep or small castle 100 GP. Lodge hunting 5 GP. Noble's estate 10 GP. Outpost or fort 50 GP. Palace or large castle 400 GP. Shop 2 GP. Temple large 25 GP. Temple small 1 GP. Tower fortified 25 GP. Trading post 10 GP. So this maintenance cost, I feel like it's not that truthful to the whatchamacallit fantasy setting where a lot of quote-unquote businesses are very self-sustainable. People that run an inn, they keep their own animals, they get their own food. They don't really buy like a restaurant nowadays would buy from farmers, from local farmers. It's very self-sustainable, I feel like. The same goes for abbeys. They did get paid by the peasants like in the past, but they had everything they needed. The monks kept bees. Some abbeys, I think, had animals, some didn't. They made beer. There wasn't so much of a cost to it as there was profit from just the everyday toil of the people who lived there. Anyways, it's not unusual for adventurers, especially after 10th level, to gain possession of a castle, a tavern, or another piece of property. They might buy it with their hard-won loot, take it by force, obtain it in a lucky draw from a deck of many things, or acquire it by other means. The maintenance cost table shows the per day upkeep cost of any such property. The cost of a small residence isn't included here because it falls under lifestyle expenses as discussed in the player's handbook. Maintenance expenses need to be paid every 30 days. Given the adventurers spend much of their time adventuring, staff includes a steward who can make payments in the party's absence. Total cost per day. The cost includes everything it takes to maintain the property and keep things running smoothly, including the salaries of hirelings. If the property earns money that can offset maintenance costs by charging fees, collecting tithes or donations, or selling goods, that is taken into account in the table. Skilled or untrained hirelings. The player's handbook explains the difference between a skilled hireling and an untrained one. I personally don't much care for having a keep as a player, or having an abbey or a tavern or anything of that sort, because it adds a lot of bookkeeping to the game, and it kind of changes the theme of the campaign from being a vagabond, an adventurer, a person who doesn't have their roots anywhere, and they're a traveler in the tumultuous seas of the fantasy world, to someone who actually owns property, has gold, cares for these sort of things, and can't just pick up everything they own, put it in a single backpack and go out into the world. But as a DM, if players want to do this sort of thing, I'm more than open. It's not hard to DM. It doesn't bother me at all, and some people actually enjoy that more than the adventurers. They enjoy assigning the hirelings jobs and improving the lair, putting up trophies, that sort of thing. And I get it. I get that some people like it. Some people like playing The Sims, and I don't judge them. Well, I only judge them secretly. I think they're horrible people and not real gamers, but I'd never say that out loud. Anyway, businesses. An adventurer-owned business can earn enough money to cover its own maintenance costs. However, the owner needs to periodically ensure that everything is running smoothly by attending to the business between adventures. See the information on running a business in the downtime activities section of this chapter. By the way, the part about not being a true gamer if you play Sims, it's a joke. I didn't mean, like, in case it wasn't clear. It's a joke, but it's also true. Anyway, castles and keeps. Employ soldiers. Use the veteran and guard statistics in the monster manual to defend them. Roadside inns, outposts on forts, palaces and temples rely on less experienced defenders. Use the guard statistics in the monster manual. These armed warriors make up the bulk of the property's skilled hirelings. Downtime activities. The campaign benefits when characters have time between adventurers to engage in other activities, allowing days, weeks or months to pass between adventures stretches the campaign over a longer period of time and helps to manage the character's level progression, preventing them from gaining too much power too quickly. I guess that's the wrong way of going about it, in my opinion. I wouldn't do what they recommend here, to just stretch the time because your characters are leveling too quickly. If that's your problem, you should change to milestone based so that you get like a steady progression of levels, and don't do what they recommend here because it's going to hamper the tempo of your adventure. It's a similar thing to what I talked about in one of the last streams, where if you have 10 astonishing plot developments and you can make them all happen in your single game instead of a single campaign, it just gives you more gaming per second, more interesting plot developments per second. There's shows that have a lot of things happening at an insane pace, and they're usually good shows, and there's shows that nothing really happens a lot of the time. That's bad. That means the show is boring. Allowing characters to pursue side interests between adventures also encourages players to become more invested in the campaign world. When a character owns a tavern in a village or spends time carousing with the locals, characters players more likely to respond to threats to the village and its inhabitants. As your campaign progresses, your players' characters will not only become more powerful, but also more influential and invested in the world. They might be inclined to undertake projects that require more time between adventures, such as building and maintaining a stronghold. As the party gains levels, you can add more downtime between adventures to give characters the time they need to pursue such interests. Whereas days or weeks might pass between low-level adventures, the amount of downtime between higher level adventures might be measured in months or years. I wouldn't, unless you have a story that specifically calls for a long time period between two games. Don't do it. Like, why do it? But if you do have a story that that would benefit from a large amount of time passing, yeah, go for it, sure. It would be interesting to have a campaign where everybody starts as like a fresh, bright-eyed adventurer, and the midway through the campaign there is this crisis moment. There's this crisis moment in the game, maybe something goes poorly in the roll start game and the main villain escapes, something is lost forever, there is a great calamity in the world and the world changes for the worse for it, and right after that you might want to deliberately make 10 years pass and have your characters turn from these bright-eyed newbies into grizzled, maybe bitter people who want to redeem their past mistake, and the tone of the campaign changes dramatically from then on. It could be a really great moment for the players, or they might hate it. I don't know. It depends on what sort of people they are and what sort of vision they had for their characters. But if they're people that you know well and you feel like they'd be totally into it, and it's not their first game and they think they've seen everything and the role-playing games have to offer, I highly recommend such twists. And by the way, it's a bit where it says that having a character own an inn in a nearby city might make them more interested in the well-being of the city. I feel like this rulebook has a lot of subtle hints that the majority of players are secretly horrible players that don't want to do anything unless they're given gold by the bucket and magical swords. They hate everything except for getting loot. You have to coax them into playing the game and adventuring and actually having some chemistry between them and other players, or them and the NPCs. And sometimes it's partly true because people can be reluctant to do things in D&D, but I guess it's between you and the players. You should talk to your players too about what you want the game to be like, that you don't want them to never want to budge for anything when an NPC asks something dangerous of them, or a fellow player wants to do something that's unreasonable but at the same time cool. That you want your campaign to feature cool things and you're expecting them to be on board with it, to have a character that does interesting things, not just tries to win, quote unquote. Because winning in an RPG is not winning in combat, it's creating a badass story that you're gonna have great memories of afterwards, and it could be a memorable character death that contributes to that. A glorious failure. That's the way I see it. And that's the way I see it as a player as well, not only as a DM. And I highly recommend going for that sort of feel and trying to sell it to your players, to convince them that it's great, that they should try. Anyway, Chapter 8, Adventuring of the Player's Handbook, describes a few downtime activities to fill the void between adventures. Depending on the style of campaign and the particular backgrounds and interests of the adventurers, you can make some or all of the following additional activities available as options. A character can spend time between adventures building a stronghold. Before work can begin, the characters must acquire a plot of land. If the estate lies within a kingdom or similar domain, the character will need a royal charter, a legal document granting permission to oversee the estate in the name of the crown. A land grant, a legal document bequeathing custody of the land to the character for as long as he or she remains loyal to the crown, or a deed, a legal document that serves as proof of ownership. Land can be also acquired by inheritance or other means. Royal charters and land grants are usually given by the crown as a reward for faithful service, although they can also be bought. Deeds can be bought or inherited. A small estate might sell for as little as 100 GP, or as much as 1000 GP. A large estate might cost 5000 GP or more, if it can be bought at all. On the estate, if secured, a character needs access to building materials and labourers. The building a stronghold table shows the cost of building the stronghold, including materials and labour, and the amount of time it takes, provided that the character is using a downtime to oversee construction. Work can continue when the character is away, but each day the character is away adds 3 days to the construction time. Building a stronghold. Abbey, 50,000 GP. Guildhall, town or city, 5,000 GP. Keep or small castle, 50,000 GP. Noble estate with manor, 25,000 GP. Outpost or fort, 15,000 GP. Palace or large castle, 500,000 GP. Temple, 50,000 GP. Tower fortified, 15,000 GP. Trading post, 5,000 GP. Carousing. Characters can spend their downtime engaged in a variety of hedonistic activities, such as attending parties, binge drinking, gambling, or anything else that helps them cope with the perils they face on their adventures. A carousing character spends money as though maintaining a wealthy lifestyle. See Chapter 5, Equipment of the Player's Handbook. At the end of the period spent carousing, the player rolls percentile dice and adds the character's level, then compares the total to the carousing table to determine what happens to the character, or you choose. I don't much care for this sort of thing. The age-old pretend drinking in a role-playing game, I always find it kind of cringe, I don't know. But if the player were a person that liked to drink, I would have nothing against that person, or the people, a section of the party, a group from the party that wants to drink in an inn, to just have some drinks in real life. It's not on the topic of alcohol, but I remember a story about a DM who, instead of the normal snacks people sometimes bring to games, some people bring snacks to games, others don't, but instead of the usual gaming snacks, he made flatbread, the medieval bread. What's it called? Non-yeast containing type of bread. I don't know what it's called. It looks kind of flat. It doesn't look like the sort of bread you buy in a shop. It has a characteristic look to it. And he gave those to his players when they were at an inn. And I feel that's like a really good idea. It's kind of cool. Maybe it's a one-time thing. Maybe not as a one-time thing. I don't know. I've never done anything like it myself. If I was a DM and I could surprise my players with that sort of thing, I'd totally do it. And if I had players who drink, I wouldn't mind giving them 2 cold ones when the characters are buying ale in a tavern. It's much better than just the usual pretend drinking in a role-playing game. Carousing, 1d10 plus level. Okay, 1 to 10, you're jailed for 1d4 days at the end of the downtime period on charges of disorderly conduct and disturbing the peace. You can pay a fine of 10 GP to avoid jail time, or you can try to resist arrest. 11 to 20, you regain consciousness in a strange place with no memory of how you got there, and you have been robbed of 3d6 times 5 GP. 21 to 30, you make an enemy. This person, business, or organization is now hostile to you. The DM determines the offended party. You decide how you offended them. 31 to 40, you are caught up in a whirlwind romance. Roll a d20. On a 1 to 5, the romance ends badly. On a 6 to 10, the romance ends amicably. On an 11 to 20, the romance is ongoing. You determine the identity of the love interest, subject to your DM's approval. If the romance ends badly, you might gain a new flaw. If it ends well or is ongoing, your new love interest might represent a new bond. Okay, that's another thing I kind of don't like in tabletop role-playing game. I don't like romance in tabletop role-playing games. It's always kind of cringe to me. I can't. I really hate it. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter if it involves 2 players, a player and an NPC, an NPC and an NPC. Like, you're not gonna roleplay 2 characters talking sweet nothings to each other, alright? So you can just have that not happen. But still, I don't like it. It just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know what to tell you. 41 to 80. You earn modest winnings from gambling and recuperate your lifestyle expenses for the time spent carousing. 81 to 90. You earn modest winnings from gambling. You recuperate your lifestyle expenses for the time spent carousing and gain 1d20 times 4 GP. 91 or higher, you make a small fortune gambling. You recuperate your lifestyle expenses for the time spent carousing and gain 4d6 times 10 GP. Your carousing becomes the stuff of local legends. That's awesome, if you can roll that. How does it, like these two are 10% each. This is 20%, it's modest. 31, okay. So you have 70% of something bad happening and just 30% of, well, actually this is moot. So you have 20% of actually gaining money from getting drunk. I guess that's fair. Like, it's fair that it's very little. In real life, whenever you get drunk, you do not have, I bet you do not have 20% chance to come out richer off of it. Magic items are the DM's purview, so you decide how they fall into the party's possession. As an option, you can allow player characters to craft magic items. The creation of a magic item is a lengthy, expensive task. To start, a character must have a formula that describes the construction of the item. The character must also be a spellcaster with spell slots and must be able to cast any spells that the item can produce. Moreover, the character must meet a level minimum determined by the item's rarity, as shown in the crafting magic items table. For example, a 3rd level character could create a wand of magic missile, an uncommon item, as long as the character has spell slots and can cast magic missile. The same character could make a +1 weapon, another uncommon item. No particular spell required. You can decide that certain items also require special materials or locations to be created. For example, a character might need an alchemist's supplies to brew a particular potion, or the formula for a flame tongue might require the weapon to be forged with lava. Alright, that sort of thing. Normally, when people do shopping or crafting or whatever, I don't much care for it. It's necessary to a game, at least shopping. I accept that, it's part of the game, but it's usually more lengthy than I like and it's kind of boring a lot of the times. Unless you have an interesting dialogue with an interesting shopkeeper, but that's rare. However, on the topic of creating magic items, I would be totally down to have a campaign where one of the characters is actually a craftsman. They're not adventurer mainly, they're adventuring because they want to uncover the secrets of lost crafts or gather materials from monsters to further their crafts. Maybe they have been banished from their clan for trying to take a own tradition into a different direction and build items that are unorthodox. And over their adventuring career, they want to prove themselves a worthy craftsman. They want to make stuff that the clan didn't see as fit for their bloodline, for example. And that's the reason, right? I want it to be sufficiently epic for them to be an adventurer, but at the same time, if they were to spend an ungodly amount of their campaign making stuff, I'd want them not to be just an average adventurer who just picks up a hammer and hammers at a piece of iron because it's good, it's what power gamers do. I'd like for them to be in the story a character that would be an awesome craftsman. And I'd be totally down for it, but I've never had any player try to make a character along these lines in my campaign, so it might never happen. Who knows? But it would be cool. Also, if the characters kill a wyvern, for example, right? And they're all normal people, normal adventurers, but all of a sudden they kill a wyvern and they think that it could be made into an armor. They're like, we skinned the wyvern, we spent 2 hours and we skin it. When then, like, normal people who wouldn't spend 2 hours skinning a monster in the middle of wilderness just because it's worth something, they'd rather just pursue the goals of tracking some goblins that threaten the village. I hate when players do that, and they tend to do that. So yeah, a bunch of this stream is me whining, I suppose, about stuff that I don't necessarily like and tabletop gaming, but whining is one of the small pleasures of life. If you can't even whine, what's the reason for living? Crafting magic items, common, creation cost 100 GP, minimum level 3rd, uncommon 500 GP, minimum level 3rd, rare 5000 GP, minimum level 6th, very rare 50,000 GP, minimum level 11th, legendary 500,000 GP, minimum level 17th. So it's as much as a palace, a legendary item. I approve. An item has a creation cost specified in the crafting magic items table. The character engaged in the crafting of a magic item makes progress in 25 GP increments. spending that amount for each day of work until the total cost is paid. The character is assumed to work for 8 hours each of these days, thus creating an uncommon magic item. Takes 20 days and 500 GP. You are free to adjust the costs to better suit your campaign. If a spell will be produced by the item being created, the creator must expend one spell slot of the spell's level for each day of the creation process. The spell's material components must also be at hand throughout the process. If the spell normally consumes those components, they are consumed by the creation process. If the item will be able to produce the spell only once, as with a spell scroll, the components are consumed only once by the process. Otherwise, the components are consumed only once each day of the item's creation. Multiple characters can combine their efforts to create a magic item if each of them meets the level prerequisite. Each character can contribute spells, spell slots, and components as long as everyone participates during the entire crafting process. Each character can contribute 25 GP worth of effort for each day spent helping to craft the item. Normally, a character who undertakes this activity creates a magic item described in the Chapter 7 treasure. At your discretion, you can allow players to design their own magic items using the guidelines in Chapter 9, Dungeon Master's Workshop. That's an interesting thing. I'd want my players to have some input on what the item is going to be like. And I wonder what's in the chapter mentioned here. Sounds interesting. It's probably not so much about crafting items, but about customizing things, because it's called Dungeon Master's Workshop. But we'll see. While crafting a magic item, a character can maintain a modest lifestyle without having to pay the 1 GP per day, or a comfortable lifestyle at half the normal cost. See Chapter 5 Equipment of the Player's Handbook. Gaining renown. A character can spend downtime improving his or her renown within a particular organization. See renown in Chapter 1. Between adventures, a character undertakes minor tasks for the organization and socializes with its members after pursuing these activities for a combined number of days equal to his or her current renown multiplied by 10. The character's renown increases by 1. This mechanic, this whole renown mechanic, I hate it. I would never do that, by the way, but it's here, so there's no harm in knowing about it. Performing sacred rites. A pious character can spend time between adventures performing sacred rites in a temple affiliated with a god he or she reveres. Between rites, the character spends time in meditation and prayer. A character who is a priest in the temple can lead these rites, which might include weddings, funerals, ordinations. A layperson can offer sacrifices in the temple or assist a priest with a rite. A character who spends at least 10 days performing sacred rites gains inspiration, described in Chapter 4 of the Player's Handbook. At the start of each day of the next 2d6 days. That's a lot of inspiration. But it takes 10 days, I guess. Priest OP. Running a business. Adventurers can end up owning businesses that have nothing to do with delving into dungeons or saving the world. A character might inherit a smithy, or the party might be given a parcel of farmland or a tavern as a reward. If they hold on to the business, they might feel obliged to spend time between adventures maintaining adventure and making sure it runs smoothly. The character rolls percentile dice and adds the number of days spent on this downtime activity, maximum 30, then compares the total of running a business table to determine what happens. If the character is required to pay the cost as a result of rolling on this table but fails to do so, the business begins to fail. For each unpaid debt incurred in this manner, the character takes a -10 penalty to subsequent rolls made on this table. So there is a death spiral. If your business starts failing, it's going to start failing more quickly. Unless you suddenly get a hold of a lot of gold to fix the stuff. D10 plus days 1 to 20. You must pay 1.5 times the business's maintenance cost for each of the days. 21 to 30. You must pay the business's full maintenance cost for each of the days. 31 to 40. You must pay half the business's maintenance cost for each of the days. Profits cover the other half. 41 to 60. The business covers its own maintenance cost for each of the days. 61 to 80, the business covers its own maintenance cost for each of the days. It earns a profit of 1d6 times 5 GP. The business covers its own maintenance cost for each of the days. It earns a profit of 2d8 times 5. The business covers its own maintenance cost for each of the days. It earns a profit of 3d10 times 5 GP. Selling magic items. Few people can afford to buy a magic item, and fewer still know how to find one. Adventurers are exceptional in this regard, due to the nature of the profession. A character who comes into possession of a common, uncommon, rare, or very rare magic item that he or she wants to sell can spend downtime searching for a buyer This downtime activity can be performed only in a city or another location where one can find a wealthy individual interested in buying magic items. Legendary magic items and priceless artifacts can't be sold during downtime. Finding someone to buy such an item can be the substance of an adventure or a quest. For each sellable items, the character makes a DC 20 intelligence investigation check to find buyers. Another character can use his or her downtime to assist with the search, granting advantage on the checks. On a failed check, no buyer for the item is found after a search that lasts 10 days. On a successful check, a buyer for the item is found after a number of days based on the item's rarity, as shown in the sellable magic item table. A character can attempt to find buyers for multiple items at once. Although this requires multiple intelligence investigation checks, the searches are occurring simultaneously, and the results of multiple failures or successes aren't added together. For example, if the character finds a buyer for a common magic item in 2 days and a buyer for an uncommon magic item in 5 days, but fails to find a buyer for a rare item up for grabs, the entire search takes 10 days. For each item a character wishes to sell, the player rolls percentile dice and consults the selling a magic item table, applying a modifier based on the item's rarity, as shown in the sellable magic items table. The character also makes a charisma persuasion check and adds that check total to the roll. The subsequent total determines what the buyer offers to pay for the item. You determine the buyer's identity. Buyers sometimes procure rare and very rare items through proxies to ensure their identities remain unknown. If the buyer is shady, it's up to you whether the sale creates legal complications for the party later. I don't know how I'd handle selling a magical item on my campaign nowadays. The process they seem to delineate is kind of complex, because usually a player would be like, I want to sell it during a game, right? They'd say that during a game, hey, I want to sell it. And what do you tell them? You can't, because you can only sell it in the downtime. I wouldn't probably handle it by the book, but I don't know how I would. I'm gonna need to think about it very intensely before my second campaign, because the first one is not gonna have an opportunity to sell a magic campaign. The mini campaign that I'm gonna do first is not gonna have an opportunity to sell a magic item, but like a future one, I need to think about this one. Sellable magic items: rarity common, base price 100 GP, days to find a buyer 1d4, d100 modifier plus 10, uncommon, base price 500 GP, days to find a buyer 1d6, 1d100 roll modifier plus 0, rare, base price 5000, days to find a buyer 1d8, d10 roll modifier minus 10, very rare, base price 50,000 GP, days to find a buyer 1d10, d100 roll modifier minus 20. Apply this modifier to rolls on the selling magic item table. Selling a magic item: d100 plus mod, you find 20 or lower, a buyer offering a tenth of the base price, 21 to 40, a buyer offering a quarter of the base price, and a shady buyer offering half the base price, 41 to 80, a buyer offering half the base price and a shady buyer offering the full base price, 81 to 90, a buyer offering the full base price, 91 or higher, a shady buyer offering 1.5 times the base price, no questions asked. The last one, it's interesting. It sounds like a trap, and I like things that sound like a trap, as a DM at least, not in real life. Sowing rumors. Swaying public opinion can be an effective way to bring down a villain or elevate a friend. Spreading rumors is an efficient, if underhanded, way to accomplish that goal. Well-placed rumors can increase the subject's standing in the community or embroil someone in scandal. A rumor needs to be simple, concrete, and hard to disprove. An effective rumor can also be believable, playing off of what people want to believe about the person in question. Telling a rumor about an individual or organization requires a number of days depending on the size of the community, as shown in the sowing rumors table. In a town or city, the time spent must be continuous. If the character spreads a rumor for 10 days, disappears on an adventure for another few days, and then returns, the rumor fades away without the benefit of constant repetition. Sowing rumors. Settlement-sized village, time required 2d6 days. Town, time required 46 days. City, time required 66 days. I didn't know there was a table for that, but I've actually did some sowing rumors as one of my characters in D&D, and it wasn't in a town, it was like in a group of laborers traveling together on some carts. I wonder if the DM secretly rolled something. Maybe they played it by the ear, maybe they did roll. Nothing came from the rumor so far, nothing visible. Nothing tangible. Anyway, the character must spend 1 GP per day to cover the cost of drinks, social appearances, and the like. At the end of the time spent sowing the rumor, the character must make a DC 15 charisma, deception, or persuasion check. If the character succeeds, the community's prevailing attitudes towards the subject shift one step toward friendly or hostile, as the character wishes. If the check fails, the rumor gains no traction, and further attempts to propagate it fail. Shifting a community's general attitude towards a person or organization doesn't affect everyone in the community. Individuals might hold their own opinions, particularly if they have personal experience in dealing with this subject of the rumor. Training to gain levels. What? You can do that sort of thing in downtime? I'd never allow it. No way, that's disgusting. Anyway, let's read it. Let's find out what it's all about. As a variant rule, you can require characters to spend downtime training or studying before they gain the benefits of a new level. If you choose this option, once a character has earned enough experience points to attain a new level, he or she must train for a number of days before gaining any class features associated with the new level. Okay, so this is not what I thought. I thought you could train to get an additional level over what experience normally awards you, but apparently it's like a more harsh version where you get the experience, but you can't get the level until you actually put in some extra hours training. So that one I'd allow it. Might be interesting if you have a narrative spin to it. The training time required depends on the level to be gained, as shown in the training to gain levels table. Training cost is the total training time. Training to gain levels, level 10, 2nd to 4th, training time 10 days, training cost 20 GP. Level attained 5th to 10th, training time 20 days, training cost 40 GP. 11th to 16th, training time 30 days, training cost 60 GP. Level attained 17th to 20th, training time 40 days, training cost 80 GP. At least it's cheap. Creating downtime activities. Your players might be interested in pursuing downtime activities that aren't covered in this chapter or in the player's handbook. If you invent new downtime activities, remember the following. An activity should never negate the need or desire for characters to go on adventures. Activities that have monetary costs associated with them provide opportunities for player characters to spend their hard-won treasure. Activities that reveal new adventure hooks and previously unknown facts about your campaign can help you foreshadow future events and conflicts. Okay, so about this one, I'd like my adventure hooks and foreshadowing happen during the campaign when everyone is playing and everyone can see the same things and it has a narrative quality to it. So I wouldn't necessarily choose that one as a downtime activity unless they started something that could bring fruitful results. For example, for what they're researching about the bad guy, about an ancient spell, about a dreaded artifact, and it's something that will take days or weeks, and they want to do it off screen, so to speak. That's a decent one, and you'd end the game on them deciding what to do, and then it would happen in the interim between the games, and the next game would happen, say, in 20 days when they already found out the stuff that's acceptable, that's kind of good. Has enough of a narrative quality for me. It's not strictly an adventure hook though, per se, like, at least the way I see it. For an activity you expect a character to repeat with variable degrees of success, consider creating a random outcome table modeled on the ones in this chapter. If a character belongs to a class or has the proficiency or background that would make him or her well suited to a particular activity, consider granting a bonus to ability checks made by the character to complete that activity successfully. I guess since we've arrived at the end of a chapter, we've read an entire chapter today, I think this is a good place to end. Thank you guys for watching, have a great evening, and see you some other time, bye.